It is Tuesday, February 16th. I'm Amy LeJoie. This is Mr. Samir Roy. We've got an interesting day planned for you guys. Interesting because you guys probably aren't super familiar with this filmmaker we will be talking about. Samir, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Another Tuesday in the books.
Another Tuesday. Yes.
Hello, Luke.
Hi, Luke. Well, let's just go ahead and let's just dive into things. We will be talking about filmmaker, documentarian, Marlon Riggs. But before that, let's talk about last night's movie, which was The Last King of Scotland. Yesterday, we talked about Forest Whitaker. This is his Oscar, I believe the only Oscar he's been nominated for, and he won. Only Oscar that this movie was nominated for, and it won. Yeah. What'd you think of this? It's been a while since both of us had seen this film.
It's such a terrifying movie. This is like an incredibly terrifying film because we know about Idi Amin, so when the movie starts and here's this young impressionable Scottish doctor, newly crowned doctor, just being sucked in so easily by just being flattered, partially a little bit scared, but mostly flattered. And it's like, you're just going along with this, but like, do you understand the consequences of going along with all of this and what this is going to do to you? Because it's definitely not going to go well for you, because we know how this person operates just from our historical knowledge of Idi Amin. So it was like the whole thing was terrifying, as opposed to like the first time where I kind of knew something about him, but I had not seen the documentary. I knew about the documentary, but I'd never seen it. Have you ever heard of it? There's a famous documentary about Idi Amin that was made in 1974 by director Barbet Schroeder.
I have not.
French film.
That was made while he was still in power, right?
Yes. Okay. With his invitation to be there. And so basically they cut like an hour-long version of the movie that was released in Uganda, and he loved it, and it was so great. And then the internationally released version was an hour and a half long and had more commentary and editorializing in it. And supposedly Idi Amin had Gaddafi, like he was friends with Libya. So he had Gaddafi's agents in England watch the movie and transcribe everything so that he could know what this version of the picture was. And then told Barbet Schroeder, well, you need to change these parts of your movie. Take this thing out. There was like 2.5 minutes or something that he wanted removed, and some comments removed. And he said, well, you need to remove them. So Barbet Schroeder's like, no. And then, of course, Idi Amin's response was, well, we have all these, we're just going to round up all the people from France that are in our country and hold them hostage until you make these changes. So he like had all like 100 100 French people like held captive basically until this film was altered, which Barbet Schroeder then did, so that all of these French people could be freed. And then, of course, as soon as he was out of power and he was in exile, he went and put that footage back in the movie. And the only version that's ever distributed now is the full version. But it's like there's stories like that about him all leading into coming into this movie. So even if this person likes you, there's like a very strong chance that they're gonna like flip instantly and turn on you, and then the cost of that physically to you will be very severe. So this every single interaction is just like terrifying, because you can see, because Forest Whitaker totally keeps that like, I can be jovial and funny right now, or I can be menacing and dangerous right now.
Flip on a dime.
And energy is there constantly. So I was like, every moment he's on screen, I'm like, who's gonna die? Who was he going to get mad at that he liked 5 minutes ago? That's going to pay for the whole time you're feeling like that. And it gave you lots of very disturbing parallels to certain people we know now, having all of your cronies be around you and trying to use those people and the influence of your position that you've stolen, um, to silence anybody who disagrees with you. Like it shows you all the steps. Like this is why anybody who's modeled their behavior after a dictator, there's a reason we're concerned. It's because it becomes so easy. Once you get to a certain point, it becomes so easy to justify anything that you want to do. No matter how violent, how like illegal, it doesn't matter what it is. Like you can get to a point like this. I mean, we obviously have not seen that here necessarily on the same way that you're seeing in this movie, but like hundreds of thousands of people died in that country. Anybody who's it's like that energy is all through the film. So it was like
I want to watch
2 hours of constant tension.
Yeah, and I can almost 100% guarantee that Forrest Whitaker watched that documentary in preparation for this with just how much. I will say I was slightly disappointed with the accordion skills. They were like,
we didn't get a whole lot of that.
Like, I feel like I could learn how to play that in like 5 minutes, but otherwise, very, I mean, maybe
but,
that was
maybe they kept that down.
Thing. Maybe that was, the real life.
Maybe he had a whole song. And they're just like, we don't have time for that song. We're just going to give a few minutes of you looking sad playing the accordion, and that's all we need. The ending of the movie was a little with the ending. It felt a little bit, because the movie also feels like, sometimes it kind of feels like the tragedy that befalls a white savior. Like there's a little bit of that energy sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I get that. This is the character you've chosen to make an entree into this story. And I like that they at least criticized that. Like people like constantly bring that up to him. Like, what did you think you were coming here for? Like the callous way in which he chose to go there to begin with tells you how unprepared he is for what is going to happen there. When he gets there. Oh, I forgot Gillian Anderson was in this movie. Like,
yeah, I knew you were going to get excited about that. Yeah, this had a really good cast in it. David Oyelowo, who was one of our previous Man Crush Mondays from months and months back, he was in it.
Oh my gosh,
doctor. Oh yeah, that character.
His character.
Yeah, but Forrest Whitaker truly was terrifying in this, and just like his complete transformation from how much weight he gained for this. I'm pretty sure that they had darkened his skin quite a bit for this, and just I mean the accent and the thing that no makeup or weight gain can change is just like his actual acting abilities and how he was able to really become this character and truly be terrifying every single time he's there, even when he's in this like kind of happy manic thing. Yes, David Oyelowo was in this.
And Kerry Washington.
It's just like, okay, but it's like this is a crazy person that we're dealing with. Like, how are we gonna please the crazy person? Let's not piss off the crazy person. And that's how it is in every scene that he's in.
Yeah, like you could just tell that every person's like, I really want to tell you the thing that you need to hear right now, but I'm afraid of what will happen when I do. And then the moment where he actually does that and he's like, you're nothing but a doctor. You're nobody. And later he's like, why didn't you tell me this was going to happen?
Yeah,
and he's like, I tried to tell you. And he's like, you didn't persuade me.
You did not persuade me.
And I'm like, that is a fair point. But at the on the same coin, I would have been terrified to go any further. If that person talked to me and the power that they have and what they've done, you've already seen it. Like, you've not put me in a position to feel like I can persuade you and live to tell the tale. So pardon me if I don't do that. But or if I couldn't do that. But there was like another element that I'd forgotten about that was a rumor. I don't know if it was ever fully explained, was how one of his wives and how her body ended up being mutilated. There was a story about that. Supposedly the person, because it wasn't obviously a white man that she had an affair with. I think it was some other doctor or something that was actually from Uganda.
Is the James McAvoy character, was he fictional?
Totally fictional. His character is totally fictional. Okay. So there's other characters that there is some sort of tie to, like, it could be based on a couple of the other people. There was a Scottish doctor at one point who I think had some connection to Idi Amin, but was not like this person in this movie. It wasn't anything like this. So this particular story is fictional, and it basically tries to contextualize some of the real things that happened through the eyes of this fictional character. But there was a situation where that wife of his was having an affair, and the story goes that the person that she had an affair with, like, they tried to get an abortion or tried to do an abortion in the village, and it actually did not work. And I don't remember if she died or not because of that, but he dismembered her body so that she couldn't be recognized or found. But that then the parts were then Idi Amin insisted that her body be reconstructed. But in this movie, it looks like they have taken the arms and legs of some other person people. Almost that have been, so it was like this grotesque shot in the movie that like I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Totally forgot about that rumor and that they put that in here. But one other thing that I'd also forgotten was the large Indian community in Uganda, and how there was actually like there was they didn't do a genocide of these Indian people. He basically tried to just ship them all out, get them out, because sort of the same thing that was going on in Germany, where it's like, oh, all these Jewish people are controlling our businesses and they're taking away our heritage. We need to protect our. So there was this justification to then kill all those people. It was almost like the same thing where Indian people had sort of become these like powerful, wealthy merchants. They'd really made businesses and not good livings catering to all these other Indian immigrants who have been brought in to help build this railway during British colonization. You know, when the Empire of the Sun was in Africa and India, they were bringing people from India to build their railways across Africa. And so all these Indian people came there. So then more Indian people came to cater to the Indian people there, and they made very successful businesses, and they really control like 65% of the wealth in Uganda. But the movie, there's a movie that we talked about last week when we were talking about Denzel Washington and how Indian audiences came to like him because this Indian director, Mira Nair, had made this film about African-American and Indian Americans romantically pairing. This movie, Mississippi Masala. That movie starts with that Indian family moving to the U.S. because they were forced out of Uganda. So that movie begins with Idi Amin, like, basically trying to cleanse the Uganda of Indian people. And all these Indian people got scattered all over, and some went to England, and then this family ended up in Mississippi. And that's how that story starts. So there's all these other angles in that. So it's just funny how all these things, as we're going through this month, are connecting back to all these other stories and all these other people. But that's what's fun when you sort of, you know, you want to learn more and you actually get to see how everything relates to each other. It's been really good. So I loved that experience from this movie too.
I would be very interested in watching that documentary that you mentioned about this horrible man. Yeah. So if you haven't seen this movie is available on HBO and HBO Max right now. Again, Forrest Whitaker won an Oscar. He's fantastic in it. James McAvoy is in it. You see his butt. A little bit.
You know, he prepped for that shot, although the funny thing about that, so there's that shot, he's in the background, he's like thinking that Idi Amin is going to leave the room for him to change. And he's like, okay, I guess you're not going to do that. So he just takes off his shorts. You see his ass, but you also see his dick flop around a little bit as he's from the side, and he's in the back of the room. There's the other scene where he has sex with Kerry Washington, and they're supposed to be lying naked on the bed, and his knee is very conspicuously propped up like this.
Yeah, what a letdown.
Perfectly blocking. I'm like, okay, guys, really, they're supposed to be in post-coital bliss. Do you think his knee is resting up like this against, like, they're not laying like that, okay? Just put the L-shaped sheet over them and call it a day if that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
But it's just funny when there was like, the camera's closer now, we better cover up that D. You know?
Yeah, but lots of fun surprises in this film. Yeah, really great cast. Check it out if you didn't see it.
Please do.
But today we were talking about a filmmaker that Samir and I have a slight connection with, not like we met him, but just being that we were in the same atmosphere as he was at UC Berkeley. Of course, he was actually part of the School of Journalism. I watched Samira. There was a whole thing on. Okay, so the film we're watching today is on Criterion. All of his films are on Criterion right now. And usually, when they do things like that, you're bound to find that they've added some other supplemental material on there. And there's a whole little like kind of hour-long documentary on him. And I watched that instead of doing my usual Wikipedia page read. I watched that.
Yes, because it being Berkeley Film and Media Studies graduates, there is a certain pressure I think both of us felt to really try to, like, if we're going to talk about Marlon Riggs, we have to do it right, because he is such an incredible like artistic figure in cinema and queer cinema and African American cinema. It as a voice for both of those communities, I don't know if there is a greater voice in cinema than his that represents both of those communities. Mm-hmm. And he graduated from the School of Journalism at Berkeley. He lived in Oakland. He may have been born in Texas, but he spent majority of his adult life here in the Bay Area. It really like his creativity really flowered here. And when you go to Berkeley Film School, there will be at least 2 or 3 classes where they will show you this film, one of his films, specifically Tongues Untied.
Which is not the one we picked, although that is his most...
It's not the one we picked, although it's on there, but that's the one that all of us watch. And it's like we watched an avant-garde film, we watched it in a documentary class. Yeah. They found ways to bring that movie into so many classes because he is like a Berkeley baby who really nurtured talent at Berkeley when he became a professor. Just an amazing, amazing human being that was gone way, way, way too soon.
Yeah. I was trying to remember which class I had watched Tongues Untied in, and I was like, I don't remember if it was avant-garde or if it was documentary. And yeah, it could have very well been both. But Marlon Riggs was born February 3rd, 1957 in Fort Worth, Texas. Had a good life there. His father was in the military. But as far as military families go, they move around. So after, they were living like a really great all Black community in this area. They felt very supportive and in a good spot. Well, then they had to move to Georgia. And that was when he was really faced with racism for the first time, of just like, okay, I don't like this. Then his family moved to Germany, and then things got better again, because then it kind of didn't matter what color you were. If you were American, they all kind of stuck together at his school. So he felt more accepted there. He got interested in filmmaking because as he started to learn more about a lot of Black literature that at the time wasn't really being discussed in school, he just saw this need, or he saw a hole that was like, okay, I'm not seeing myself represented in this way. And then even like when he was in college, I think it was when he was in college, he was like, hey, there's I'm not really seeing a lot of stuff about like Black literature or gay literature or anything. And he actually like petitioned to learn more about it, and I think he was granted that. But he thought that the media, specifically film, was a way that he could eventually see himself represented. And eventually in his films, he was in his films. He used his own experiences, which is something that made him, at the time, I mean, now we see people like, Michael Moore is in his documentary the whole time and everything, but like he's someone that really used his own stories, and that was a little more uncommon back then. His first documentary he made, I believe, was which one was this?
Was it Long Train Running? I think it was Long Train Running.
Long Train Running. You're right. So that is one, and pretty much all the documentaries that he made ended up winning awards. And he was very surprised, especially that first one, of like, that one I think focused on the history of jazz in the Bay Area, and he won awards.
Yes, this is called
okay.
Long Train Running, the story of Oakland blues. It's funny because ironically, my very poisonous landlord's office, they're one of those people that sort of snapped up a ton of West Oakland properties in the 2008 crash, and really sort of, it's really gentrifying and disenfranchising the communities that lived there before. But right across the street from this little crappy building that they've bought to have their local office in is this legendary old club that used to be a blues club. That who knows what it is anymore, but has no music in anymore. And it's like one of those places that's like, I think it's featured in that documentary. And it was like mind blowing, like, oh my gosh, this is a place I've been by so many times. And like never thought about what this building may have seen, or the people that have what people have done in this building, the music that may have been heard, and the people who came here. And it really gave, and knowing the neighborhood, it gave me this this understanding of why if I was a black person and you were a white person coming into a club, a blues club in my like rundown neighborhood, I'd be like, excuse me, do you know where this music comes from? Like, we're not here for your tourism to make you feel educated or cultured or any of that bullshit. Like, this is a place for us that came out of where we're living. So it's like, it just opened my eyes in so many ways to how that music has been appropriated for so many reasons, and where the music actually comes from, and not realizing that like I'm living in a place where I'm surrounded by a lot of that history. It's like, that was just his first documentary, and then you go through everything. Please continue. Sorry, I had to sidetrack.
Well, his next documentary he did was, now I lost it again, Ethnic Notions, which is something that it kind of relates to the documentary that we picked for today. But Ethnic Notions is really kind of more like a straight, like kind of PBS style documentary. That's also what today's film is. But it just talked about the representation of Black people in art and these images and all like the horrible, I forget exactly what it's called. I mean, it's not blackface, or well, it is blackface, but do you know what the name of that style
the
minstrel,
is? Like the minstrel
shows
and
Jemima characters and things like that.
Yeah, it pulls all these images and characters from a wide range of media, actually. I think another thing that gets lost in the talk about him sometimes is what he called, and what his one of his closest collaborators they called it gumbo editing. Where it was like you're taking all these disparate elements from all these different places and you cook them together long enough until they come together in one harmonious thing. And that, so when you look at a movie like Ethnic Notions, it's like he's used, like, there's children's books, there's advertisements, pieces of music, film, television, stage plays, like all these different forms of media that he's now like stitched together, in this really crazy concoction that delivers one really powerful message that seems at the same time incredibly clear. Like, you're never wondering what these movies mean when you watch them. You watch them and he's found a way to be intellectual, but be completely direct and be able to speak to everyone through the uniqueness of his filmmaking style, which is different from so many people. And that movie I think it won him an Emmy. Is that right?
I think it did. Yeah.
Notions.
That one did. Yeah. Starting with that, and then pretty much on, his documentaries have been edgy and controversial. Like in this thing I watched today, there was another professor at UC Berkeley. I think she was a professor of African studies. She was talking about how she was like, even Black people didn't want to watch this documentary, where it's like, we kind of already know about this and we kind of don't want to talk about it, but it's still something that should be acknowledged and discussed. And then his next film was Tongues Untied. I think that was the next one. And that was the one that he is certainly known for the most. So he had already discussed, this is how Black people have been represented. And then he took that a step further. We're like, okay, this is how Black people are represented and Black gay people are represented. And that is something, I mean, anyone can be racist. Any race can be homophobic too. He was saying, like, even in our own community, we're already a marginalized group. And then now I'm like an even smaller minority, where even amongst my own community, I'm discriminated against. And that is, I really recommend, again, this other film that we picked, just because Samir and I have seen it so many times. But if you watch tonight's film on Criterion, and all of his films are like a little over an hour long, so they're not that long. But it's really, really good. And that is certainly the one that got him pretty much like international attention. All these conservatives at the time were outraged because they found out, like, this was funded by PBS. Your taxpayer money is helping to pay for this Black gay pornography. And he's like, they gave me like $5,000. That's not a lot of money, especially to make a film.
Right. And it's like, and it was like aired on a free network. Like, what kind of funding do you think I got for this project? Even the people who supported it didn't give me money. Like,
I know, it wasn't even shot on film. It's things they were all shot on like video. Like the image quality of a lot of his films really isn't that great. You know, it's like late 80s, early 90s type of things. But yeah, really recommend Tongues Untied. And that people were just, you know, no one had seen a film like that that really talked about the topics in it. And I think it was about that time he that's when he found out that he was diagnosed with HIV. Oh, and another kind of unrelated thing, but still related to Tongues Untied, was in the media aftermath of that, it was uncovered that his partner is a white man, and they were together like 15 years, and people were calling him like a hypocrite of like, here you are talking about Black gay men love, and here you are dating a white man. And Marlon's like, yeah, you completely missed what the point of this was. Like, that's not like, I'm in a loving relationship. It happens to be with a white man, and they were together for 15 years up until Marlon Reed's death. After Tongues Untied, he did a handful of other documentaries, one of which is the one that we picked today, Color Adjustment. His final documentary ended up coming out 10 months after he died, and that one, I forgot the damn
trying to bring that. Well, while you're bringing that up, I also wanted to, you know, like when we watched Tongues Untied in school, I think it's so important that movie gets taught to film students. I think it's becoming more popular, or at least more widespread that it's coming. What is it?
Black is Black Ain't. And that is the one that's specifically about men living with HIV. Yes, sorry, continue.
Yes, no, I was like, you'll get there. I knew you'll get there. But yeah, that I remember the opening of that movie really took so many people by surprise, because it's just the words brother to brother being repeated over and over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
And we kind of laughed about it at first. We were like, we were repeating it over and over and over again ourselves. And I'm realizing now, 10 years later, I still remember those words. Like, as you know, people may have, like, however you or received it when you first saw that movie found a way to stay with every person, I think, who watched it. I don't think anybody who watched it ever really forgets that movie. I just remember, like, that's just like a simple thing that you can do that has like as a mantra effect. It's such a brilliant, simple tactic, but it's like also takes you aback a little bit because you're like not used to a movie being constructed that way, with self-address and all these clips of people, and it's poetic and it's all edited together according to a logic that belongs to his filmmaking, and I think no one else's. But I also wanted to point out, like, it looks like the comments we're getting, people are really talking in the comments today. I don't know if Luke was trying to be offensive. I think he was referencing when we were talking about all the different characters and images and media that went into the movie Ethnic Notions.
Look versus on Facebook, and I don't necessarily know if Walter was saying seriously in regards to what Luke said.
Yeah, exactly. So I think some people thought that one person was. I'm assuming y'all have worked it out. But no, that's the kind of discussions that really these movies should also inspire too, because so many people can be complacent with like, I'm not racist, I'm fine, I don't need to learn anything because I'm already a good person. And it's like, no, you really do need to learn, because if you want to be an ally and a good friend, you need to also know this history. And he's real. And Marlon Riggs is like not sugarcoating it, but he's he's telling you pretty straight up, like, that's why I love his movies so much, because they'll always be challenging on an aesthetic level and on a content level for you, because it forces you to ask questions and think about things after the movie's over. He does it in such a unique and cool way, but he also was a journalism school major, so he knows how to direct, he knows how to make a point. However he constructs it, he knows exactly how to get a point across to you. That's why he taught at that university afterwards. I mean, I remember when we talked about Howard Ashman and how Howard Ashman was even working from his deathbed in his hospital bed, people holding the phone up to his ear so he could try to help them complete this film. And Marlon Riggs was doing the same thing to teach his classes by speakerphone at one point because he was so sick. And instead of canceling classes, he would teach through speakerphone because that's how devoted he was to really helping people learn. I remember reading something about him where I think it was his partner who said, as a child, he wanted to be a preacher. That was his dream. And in a way, he sort of made that dream come true because he really was he wasn't necessarily preaching to audiences, but he had found a way to speak to large groups of people through the medium of film, and then also to teach students and literally speak from a sort of pulpit, from the lectern in a lecture hall. He was speaking to large groups of people and, helping open their eyes to the world around them. He's just such an incredible filmmaker in person. And it's like in 10 years, he made this amazing collection of movies that I think artists would be so proud to have made even one of them, and he's got, and that's what he did in 10 years.
And he's a filmmaker too that, and not just him, but like any other filmmaker who is not like you is a good way to, experience someone else's life. Like I watch his films. I am not, shockingly, a gay Black man with HIV. That's not me. But, I could still watch his stories and learn about someone else's life and someone else's experiences. And I think it's a great way, especially if you live in an area, like I live in a pretty white area. I don't know, it's just a good way to experience other people and people who that you don't necessarily get the privilege of interacting with in your day-to-day life. But Marlon Riggs really, again, he was kind of crammed down our throats a little bit at UC Berkeley, but with good reason, because he actually was good. But they really took a lot of pride that he spent so much time there and became a tenured professor. I think they gave him an honorary doctorate there. So we keep talking about Tongues Untied, which again is not the film that we picked, but we really do recommend it if you haven't seen it, because that is certainly what he is most well known for. Possibly one of his more artistic films versus the one we picked is going to be going back to kind of like that pretty standard documentary. But, he was able to do a lot of things. And we chose today's film in particular, Color Adjustment, because first off, Samir and I had not seen this. And this really focuses on the Black image in television. So it really kind of picks up where this previous film talking about Black imagery, that kind of covers everything else except going into the media. And so this really picks up where that left off. And this movie came out in 1992. And of course, us being book club for movies, we like this movie, TV. We thought would be an interesting thing to look at. This analyzes the evolution of television's earlier unflattering portrayal of Blacks from 1948 until 1988, when they are depicted as prosperous and as having achieved the American dream, a portrayal that is inconsistent with reality. And this won Marlon Riggs the Peabody Award.
Major award to have won for your work. Like,
yeah.
That is big. That's big time. Like,
it is.
That is not just made an interesting film. That is like you produce something incredibly valuable to the world through media. Like that is a big honor, and it's crazy. I love also just the title. It's such a perfect title for something analyzing how people are represented on television, considering those terms and turning of the knobs, and it's like, what are you really controlling? And there's so much stuff you can get out of that title. But I love Walter's last two comments here, like, very poignant comments. I think he was talking about the seeing other people and learning about other lives, because I'm like, that was another thing is like, sometimes the Olympics were like the only time you got to see anything of another culture. or or people from another country. You know, it was like the only time you saw like a diverse group of people was when you watched the Olympics. For some people, so it was like, you know, I can imagine in '76, like having been told all these stories about who and what Russians are and what they're like, and then suddenly you get to actually see them like a little more close up. Interesting. But also the talk about artists that we lost to AIDS. There was a period for a long time where everybody was having that experience where it was like at least 2 funerals a month, sometimes 1 a week. So many people just dying all around you. That was a pandemic that, you know, again, the president at the time pretty much ignored happening because it was just happening to gay people. And it was just happening to like in Africa, you know, it was like you could ignore that, something you could ignore. That's a whole other topic, but
yeah.
But Color Adjustment was something that naturally appealed to me because it also harkened back to the work of like Vito Russo, who was really doing this kind of work specifically just from like a gay perspective. How, you know, queer people are represented in film and television, and, you know, you wrote that amazing book. And then, you know, there had not been as many there had not been as large an academic study or published work on the representation of people of color. And so Marlon, of course, it's queer people who are picking up the slack in these kinds of areas for everyone else. Because now we have, this movie came along, I think about 10 years after Celluloid Closet was written. So it's wonderful to have another work that analyzes marginalized people in media that is, from what we hear, as good as this one. I don't know if anyone else is going to do what he did. Is going to be able to do what he did with this movie, but we'll see. We'll see. Because I'm excited to see how he contextualizes it.
Yeah, I finally realized how these comments worked out over here, and I could see how that could have looked very bad. But I really don't think that's what Luke meant. So I'm glad you guys cleared that up.
I know, it's just like texting back and forth.
Mention his aunt and uncle, and then Luke's next comment was, "Oh, Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben." Yeah, that would have been really bad.
Oh dear. Okay, so that's what was going on. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. Woo. Yeah. That would have been really, really offensive.
Okay. Good. I'm like, I don't want to have to lecture anybody about how to use the comments now.
Definitely a big misunderstanding.
But no, everyone's fine.
Oh, that's.
I'm
cool.
like,
I just realized that reading the comments. I was like, oh. Mm-mm. No.
Bad timing. Kind of like when you unmute yourself accidentally in the Zoom meeting while you're screaming a swear word because you stubbed your toe or something.
Oh God!
Only worse.
No. Big misunderstanding there. But please watch Color Adjustment. All of his films right now are on the Criterion app, Criterion channel. We plug it really frequently. And this is something, I think they do have that 2-week free trial if you still haven't done this. But please watch Color Adjustment if you're interested in watching his other films. I would go ahead and start with Tongues Untied if you hadn't seen that. Because it really is just phenomenal. I mean, I might even revisit it. Yeah. But I hope you guys enjoy this. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about Regina King, specifically in her Oscar-winning performance of If Beale Street Could Talk. It's one of our, I think, our final Patreon pick for the month.
I think so.
Yes. So looking forward to revisiting that movie as well. And again, Samir and I have not seen Color Adjustment, so it'll be fun.
This will be new, but I have a feeling we'll have Crystal just made it.
Yeah. Hi, Crystal. Watch Color Adjustment.
Everybody's welcome back tomorrow, Luke.
Yes.
You're all fine. We know you.
Yeah, we know that's not what you meant. Yeah, we really know that's not what you meant. Yeah.
Don't worry, we love you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Believe me, we would have called you out if we thought that's what you meant.
We would have said something. Like if people post creepy or inappropriate things, we never let it slide.
Well,
we would have told you you're fine.
Yes, those were just the wrong two comments to follow each other.
It was just bad timing, okay?
Very bad
Bad
time, very bad
timing.
time. Yes. Um, but yeah, Luke, please join us tomorrow. Don't, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all the comments, even when they can get a little muddled.
No, I love the discussion. Everybody, please
Yes,
talk, talk, talk.
we do. That's really something that we always love about this. We want people's opinions. We want this to be an open forum, and yeah.
Hmm.
If anyone actually is racist, we will call you out on that shit. Okay, we will not tolerate that. Thank you guys for watching. Color Adjustment available on Criterion. Please consider donating to our Patreon. I'm going to put the link over here in the comments. We look forward to tomorrow. We still have a lot of fun things planned for this week. And yeah, learn a little bit about TV history with tonight's Color Adjustment. And we'll